This is short film DVD commentary, and I've got Paul Dees here with his short and Siege of the Werewolf. Is that right, Paul?
That's right.
Paul and me are going to do a video commentary of his short film, and then we're going to discuss filmmaking and what he did in his short. And then we're going to watch the short at the very end, to, just so you can see it clean.
The first scene of the feature story that I wrote, and it has to do with two teenagers that are out on a date, and they end up not having a very pleasant evening by the time the film ends, if you will. When this scene ends, I don't want to spoil how that happens, but it's they have a very bad night. I'll just put it that way.
I can't believe you're a metal fan. Thought you weren't into this.
So how did you light them from below like that?
So our DP had these little lights called cube. I'm trying to remember what they were called, but they were just little cube type lights that were
with a battery, probably with a battery.
Yeah, and you just placed them in strategic areas. And so that way he had room to move and they weren't in the way of the shots and things like that.
Oh, that's great.
Royalty in your family.
Huh. So, should I call
and
you
where'd you find your
Magic
actress?
Melon?
I know your son is the boy in it, but where'd you find your actress?
Yeah, we shot it in Tucson, my hometown. And so there was a talent agency there. And so I emailed them and said, hey, I'm looking for this actress. And they sent me this gal, Sarah. And I looked at her reel and everything, and she was great. She's perfect.
Cool.
I'm sorry.
And what I love about this moment here is there's this tension of the kiss that's coming, and then this other tension kind of steps in over it. So it's almost building off of it, or taking it in a different direction. And then there's this new tension that's established about what's lurking, or the monster that's lurking in the background. So I just love that.
There. Don't mess with me, man. I know how to use this. I am not kidding. I will knock your freaking head off.
And then I also really like the blocking that's coming up. Oh, this is good. That must have been like her stepping away, stepping back. And then I love the cut to a wide where it's like, we know it's happened. It's not going to go anywhere or anywhere good, I guess. And so I love that cut to the wide. And it's almost like, is it a little bit of a foreshadowing for what's going to happen later in the film, that the werewolf's going to come into town?
Yes.
Yeah. So a little bit of that. I think I picked up on that. I thought that was exciting and different. So when did you do this?
This was in August of 2021.
Oh, during COVID, kind of a little bit after COVID, or what? I don't even remember.
It was kind of still. It wasn't like when there was total lockdown. Arizona was not quite as stringent as LA.
Okay.
So we didn't have quite the same restrictions there, but yeah, I mean, it was still kind of in the fray, if you will.
That's fun.
Oh yeah.
So I think some of the things that I really liked, I think my favorite shot of the whole thing was it's around, and I've talked about this before on episodes, where it's like you want someone to feel like they're being watched. So they've done it in the graveyard scene of Spider-Verse, where like someone's watching Miles as he's going and visiting the Peter Parker's grave, and they can do it with camera moves where the camera's moving and there's something in the foreground, but you didn't do that. You didn't move the camera, which I think is it works without moving the camera too, obviously. But you had a shot where there are some bushes in the foreground, so it feels like there's something that could hide behind the bushes or be behind the bushes. And then you had a slight zoom in on that, and that was the introduction. That was the introduction of the threat that is the werewolf, the sounds. And so where did you come up with the idea for that shot? Because I kind of discovered it just by watching and analyzing movies, but and so I'm curious how other filmmakers have found that.
Yeah, so for me, it was from the werewolf's point of view. So you got to kind of see into his perspective a little bit. It was probably influenced somewhat by the opening scene in Jaws. Where the gal that's there in the water, and you see the camera angle where you can tell the shark is approaching her, and you see what the shark is seeing basically. And it's also a bit of dramatic irony there for the audience, because the audience knows what's about to happen, but the girl doesn't.
That's what dramatic irony is.
Yeah. And so it was the same idea, is that I wanted to get that shot for the werewolf's perspective of he's coming up to the car. I put a little camera movement in it to show that he's getting closer. Meanwhile, the kids...
Was that a camera move or a zoom in? I guess there's also a kind of camera move, but it was a zoom in.
Yeah, we were hoping to do it as like a push in, with a dolly, but we didn't have someone that could pull focus. We weren't able to find somebody. So I had to keyframe it in post. And so it's actually the shot, when we shot it, the camera didn't move at all.
And there was no zoom at all.
Right. And so I just I keyframed it in Premiere Pro after that, just a little bit, because I didn't want it to be distracting, and I didn't want it to be too apparent, that kind of a thing, because then that would look kind of gimmicky. Just a little pushing is kind of simulating a dolly as best as we could, and just showing that, here he comes, and that the two teenagers, they don't have any idea yet of what's going to happen.
Yeah. It reminds me, I think it would have been really interesting. So I'm just piggybacking off of your shot and seeing what I could do with it if I was thinking about it and using it in my own stuff. I think it would be really interesting is you have a shot exterior of the car, and then you push back, and then you reveal the bushes. So it's almost like a reveal of that someone's being watched by the pushback. So that kind of got me excited about, or got me thinking your shot about what that could do. I don't know if that would work, but that's just a thought that I had. Yeah. And then, so how did you block out the scene? Like when, first of all, and how did you think about the shots of the scene? Because Paul Dees was the first AD on a short that I just shot and I just finished. And I had everything in my mind so crystal clear of the shots that I wanted to see, when I wanted to see them, and then also like where the characters were. And I'm starting to do a breakdown of blocking, and I'm realizing that maybe I felt I was too rigid in what I wanted to do with their blocking. So I'm curious what you did with like figuring out their blocking.
Right. So I definitely had a vision, because as a director, you have to be the one that says, I'd like to steer the ship in this direction. But then you also want to be able to take ideas from your actors. So kind of like, you have the captain steering the Titanic, and then someone says, hey, there's an iceberg. Okay, well, you better turn the ship this way or that way. It's that kind of thing of hearing input and things.
And I think it's important to it's important to listen to people's ideas and make sure that they're part of the team and feel like their creativity is also being used.
Yeah, definitely. Now, given that they're sitting in a car, there wasn't a lot to do. But in rehearsals, we kind of had some, ideas of, when do they get closer to each other? Do they start out close from the beginning? And we tried that. And we're like, well, then there's nowhere for them to go. And so we kind of all decided, let's start with having you just kind of sitting on either side of the car, kind of as far away as you could. In essence, that, we're still kind of getting to know each other. We like each other, but there's a little tension about, where's this going to go? And then she gives him the little hint that she's going to surprise him with something. And then they move in closer.
Surprised you have to close your eyes.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. No peeking.
I'm sorry.
You know, those kinds of things. And the other thing being that we originally were going to have her seated in the passenger seat the entire time, you know, watching what happens to Tyler and so forth. But then when we tried that, we realized she had nowhere to go. You know, and just her sitting there the whole time, we thought, well, that doesn't quite work. So we ended up putting her in the driver's seat as she's watching. And then when the werewolf comes to attack her, then she's scooting backwards in terror, like, you know, I'm trying to get away. I know I'm not going to get away, but you know, those kinds of things. And that gave her a little something more to do.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that she was in the driver's seat, to be honest. Like, I think he gave you good space for her to move and for her to feel like she can do something to protect herself and to create some a good movement there. But like, I didn't notice that she was in the driver's seat. Maybe other people did though.
Yeah.
And I thought you could have played around with, and maybe I think you did, was with like shadow. I thought she was really well lit with the light on her, and then when she steps back, there's just some interesting lighting. Like she goes into darkness for a little bit. And I just thought, I've been watching Spielberg recently, and I just thought that was some interesting. Did you plan for the shadows, or did you think about shadow much at all, or is that not what you're thinking about?
Not intentionally from the get-go, but you're right. It was one of those kind of happy accidents that happened. And as I've looked back on it, yeah, that as she's moving back towards the door, that there's a little bit of foreboding with that shadow, and it makes it more interesting rather than just having the light being uniform throughout that whole sequence. And our DP, his name's Peter Furman. He's based in Tucson, and he was really good. He has a lot of experience actually with lighting horror films and things like that. And you know, I gave him some references. You know, I had him take a look at the night scenes from Stranger Things, from A Quiet Place, as sort of a way to get started.
So like a lighting visual reference for what it feels like. Okay.
Yeah. And then, but he also added his own touches, which you want to have. I mean,
you know, just copy paste necessary.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, that was, one of those, again, what I'd call a little happy accident there. As I was watching it, it was like, oh man, she's in shadow for a minute. That's really cool. As the werewolf is coming in, and I think probably going forward, doing a similar type of story, or like in the horror genre, that I'll pay more attention to adding those elements consciously, because that kind of stuck out to me too. It's like, wow,
I think what would have been really interesting too is you didn't do it, but it just got me excited about the possibilities. Just seeing just that little shadow, I was like, wow, that would be fun to play. I think it's also because I'm watching Spielberg stuff, and I just watched Minority Report, and like the idea of like maybe like a glint off the eye or something in the darkness, that'd be kind of cool. The playing around with, I think, but so what, I'm curious, what are your favorite parts of it, and maybe what are the things that you think you should have learned or learned from it to do well in the next project?
So I think probably one of the favorite moments for me is when you see the shot of the werewolf's arm coming into frame, and you see Tyler lying there motionless, and you're like, okay, this is not good, because you kind of get a little bit more of a glimpse of him. And I wanted to do it in such a way where we don't see the werewolf all the way from head to toe. And that was influenced a lot by Spielberg, really, like in Jurassic Park, when you have the Velociraptor attacks the employee of Jurassic Park at the very beginning.
The guy with the hat.
Yeah, and you see him being pulled into the cage, and that's a dinosaur, and there's a problem, but you don't see every little bit of it, kind of a thing. So I think there's moments where it shows just glimpses of the werewolf. The other thing was Tyler's scream. That was the first take, and he just let it rip, and we all kind of looked at each other like, Yeah, I think that's gonna work just fine. And he said, well, I can do another one if you want. He says, my throat hurts, but I said, nah, I think we're good. I think we got it. And then she had a pretty good blood curdling scream herself. And even after we finished, we recorded a couple of takes. We were just the with the sound recorder there. She said, I think I got a couple more in me. So we did a couple more takes of that and kind of found the best ones. And
Just
so,
going
yeah.
back to my favorite shot is probably not a lot's happening, but it's just the terror of what is happening without us seeing it, of the city below. I think that's one of my favorite shots of the film. But yeah. So what were some aha moments that you had during the film, and maybe some things that you learned or you want to do different next time?
So I think, maybe just trying to maybe nail some of the logistics of production a little bit. Things like anticipating issues with all the paperwork and things with the permits and all that.
That's
probably
complicated.
Giving myself a little bit more time to get that ready to go, because we did have one snag towards the end where I thought we had time to get everything cleared, and luckily the Parks and Rec people were like, yeah, that's not a problem, because we shot it on this hill. It's called A Mountain there in Tucson, and it's basically like a city park. And so they said, oh, well, there's this one other thing that we needed to have you do. And it was a miscommunication, but it just told me, okay, have a few days in reserve in case there are those moments, if you will. And I think the other thing I learned on set was to remind myself to maybe look in the monitor a bit more, because I'm very kind of hands-on, so I want to be right there watching the actors and be kind of the first person they see when we cut. And so it's kind of learning, though, that I need to look in at the monitor as well, so that I can see what's going on and the DP, and I can kind of make sure everything's ready to go. I mean, we would check it before the shot, but kind of
what you actually got in the box in the
right
can.
Yeah, and then run over and then talk to the actors. And I know, like, maybe down the road I can have one of those little portable monitors. I've seen like Clint Eastwood has it and Christopher Nolan does, where it's like the best of both worlds. So they're in for the actors, but they got this little monitor they can look, and then the shot's done, and then they look up and talk to the actors.
That's great. That's a great idea. I was thinking about the same thing. It was like, because there on the last short I did, I made some mistakes and I thought I had it, but it would have been better if I had reviewed the footage and watched it and say, oh, we can make a tweak here or out of focus thing here, so we should do it again. Right. So like going back and watching it's such a simple idea, but in the moment it's also like feeling like you want to get done, and you want to help people get out. You want to get them home.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So why did you want to tell this story?
Well, I grew up watching the old Universal horror films when they would come on late at night. So like Frankenstein from 1931, The Wolfman from 1941, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I would check out books. This is when I was in elementary school, about monsters. And I just thought they were cool. And so that's part of it. And kind of my love for that genre. And the other thing is the entire feature really has to do with, there's the A story, which is basically a mystery about who is this werewolf that's terrorizing this town and causing all these murders. But along with that, in the featured film, there's a story of a family in crisis, really, that at the beginning of the story, that they're not really connecting as a family. You have the dad he and his son don't get along because of his career choices. He wants to be a filmmaker. Dad isn't really thrilled about that. Mm-hmm. You got the sister who is basically the gal at the high school that every guy wants to date. And she's more interested in her popularity than her family. You got the mom trying to hold it together, you know, so that's how they start out. And then it's this journey that they take together of eventually growing close as a family. So that's sort of like that.
So that's their arc, their character.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, I try to do that in the things that I write, that there's that glue, if you will, that to me, what the story is truly about is oftentimes that B story.
I'm curious, in the feature script, does the werewolf of the thing that helps them come together?
Ultimately, yeah, through crisis, and they have to.
That's great.
To bond together, yeah, through that. You know, it's like you don't wish adversity on people, but a lot of times that's how we grow as people, is through our challenges, whether it's in our own personal growth or our relationships with other people, and so yeah, that's kind of what I was going for there.
What would they have died if they didn't come together? I'm just curious. Would they have all died, or would someone have died?
Not in the sense physically.
Okay.
But their relationship would have died, I think, in a sense. And to me, it's like you hear the expression, there are things worse than death. And to have like a family, you know, and I've known people that are from broken families and things like that. And in no way judging, because, you know, life is hard, you know, but that I think that is in many ways a worse, you know, a fate worse than death is, as they say, to have, you know, the death of a family relationship and things. You know, that sticks for a long time.
It reminds me what you're talking about. I think it's great that you picked this scene out of the film to do, because it reminds me of the first 5 or 7 minutes of Scream, when Drew Barrymore's being attacked. And it's like, it kind of sets up the world. It's almost standalone. You could just make those 7 minutes a short film by itself. So I think it's great that you picked this one, because you might not even know that this is part of a feature film, but you're introducing the world and the characters and stuff like that, or not the character, but the monster. So I thought that was a good idea. So you want to be a director and writer. Is that what your goal is?
Yeah, and to some degree producer as well.
Oh, so crazy. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big mountain to climb, but I look at people like Peter Jackson or Christopher Nolan that have worn all 3 hats and that kind of thing. And so that would be the ultimate goal. Certainly writer and directing films.
What what do you have any like plans or ideas about like the milestones that you're going to give yourself, so that that you're working to get there? What are your ideas on like actually making that happen?
Yeah, so there's actually I went to film school, you know, and did the master's
film
program.
academy.
Yeah, in filmmaking. But right now, actually, I'm taking a class that I would highly recommend to people. It's through Stage 32, and it's a class that's called How to Produce Your $5 million film or under, basically. So wow. 5 million being the
max, the top,
the cap. Yeah. And this gal has really done that over and over and over again, the instructor. And she's very thorough about talking about the state of the industry. Last week, we talked about distribution, and particularly pre-sales, which is still, she says, it's still something that can happen. A lot of people are thinking it can't, but she actually makes a pretty good case for, you know, pre-sales are still possible if you package it right and things. And then we're going to be talking about the financing end of things and pitfalls to avoid. So it's really some additional hands-on experience, or instruction, I guess is a better word for it, on how to proceed forward with that. So the milestones would be to be able to package things, particularly getting the pre-sales all ready to go, and then you know, looking at the equity investors, which is probably the trickiest part of it. But it seems like if you have that skin in the game, if you will, particularly with the funding, then you're able to talk to talent agencies and say, you know, hey, we've got this much money and we'd like to have client XYZ that you manage, that you represent, be in our film. And even it's suggested to do a pay or play, which I wouldn't recommend unless you're sure you have the funds, because then you're obligated to pay that person.
What's pay per play? I've never heard of that.
So pay or play means regardless of whether you make the film or not, that they're getting a paycheck.
The talent.
Yep. So you offer that to actors, and then that gives you a little bit more leverage, and they're going, okay, yep, they're going to get paid, and the actor feels better about that. So does the representation, because an agent is making
money off their talent.
Right. Yeah. That 10% commission and things. So I think it's getting the financing all together and those ducks in a row. It's easier said than done. I mean, I know it's kind of an uphill battle, but that's probably the biggest benchmark, I think, would be that. Because once you have that proverbial skin in the game and you've got the money to use, then it seems like everything else pretty well falls into place after that.
Interesting. So what did you say? This short, it's about, is it 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes long? How long is this short?
I think it's just over 2 minutes.
Yeah. 2 minutes. Okay. So what's the key to making a short film? Because I just did that, but I want to hear what you think about that.
When I was in film school, one of my screenwriting instructors showed us a Pixar short film called Presto. And it's about a bunny that's part of
a magician.
Yeah. And he pointed out, he said, if you look at, he says, and this is just one example, he says, if you look at any Pixar short, that it really is its own standalone story. And it's easier said than done to do that because you're so limited by time. I think it's a lot easier to write a feature-length story because you've got room to stretch your legs and develop things and all that. But with a short film, it's like you've got to make everything happen immediately. But I think that's probably what the key is does it have a beginning, a middle, and end? Does it have its own 3-act structure?
Even in 2 minutes.
Yeah. And that sort of a thing. And, what is the state of the characters at the beginning? What is the state of them by the time they're done? Is there a journey along the way? And so, and that's what I tried to do with this one. And in context with the feature, even, it sets the world for the story that says, this is not going to be a good thing. It looks like this town is going to have some real problems here for a while dealing with this werewolf and that kind of deal. And but it's also their own little story of the two of them, sort of a tragic love story of what could have been, because they're just about ready to kiss. And, I could have had them actually kiss, but I thought, nah, I'm not going to be quite so nice. It's going to be like almost there. Right. And then they have something it kind of get in the way with that, where it's like, oh, what's going on there? And then he's not able to kiss her, right? And that they have this untimely end. Yeah.
I really like the double tension. So there's two tension arcs. There's not just one, and I think it's what's really powerful in film. I've realized is you can have a whole tension arc in just a shot, in a scene, and then or a sequence or a film, and they can all sprout and jump over each other. And that's kind of what's happening here with this one, with the two tensions. I guess the last thing to end on is when you're envisioning a film, what comes first? The reason why behind the shots, or are you seeing the movie in your head first, or is it a combination of them? How does that work for you?
Right. So for me, I think it's a combination of both. Again, in film school, one of my directing instructors, he would always ask this question after we would show our completed assignments. My film school was very hands-on, so it was, okay, here's the type of movie you're going to do. You're going to shoot it over this next weekend. You're going to cut it together. And then, in about a week's time, we'll watch everybody's film and see how everybody did. And so this one instructor the first thing he would say after we watched somebody's work is he would say, what did we see?
Like plain language and plain language.
Right. And so he really honed in the fact that every shot, every cut everything that you do with production design, lighting, sound, the whole 9 yards needs to be purposeful. And so for me, as I'm envisioning it, I see that, the scenes, sometimes I'll storyboard it out, those kinds of things. And often storyboarding really helps, because then I can look at it and see, is this what I wanted? And that kind of a thing. So, and then I can adjust it as needed. But yeah, it's pretty much like a simultaneous type of mindset, because then that way I'm free to create, and I'm not stuck just on, well, what does this mean? What does this mean?
See,
And
you're not judging yourself already. You're
Right.
just letting it flow first.
yeah, and that's
Okay.
really important with creativity in general, whether you're writing, whether you're storyboarding, whatever, is that you throw a lot of pasta against the wall and see what sticks. And then once it sticks, then you go, okay, now how well did it stick? Right? And and then that's where you start making your adjustments. So yeah, it's kind of like I'm wearing two hats at the same time, but not trying to weight the scale on either side of those two things about seeing the film and why you do the shots, so that you're free to throw everything down on the palette and then kind of refine it from there.
Yeah, I've realized sometimes with the vision I see in my head of something, it's wrong, and I don't figure that out until I analyze it and look at it. But I think that's just like the give and take of, like, because you're not right all the time right off the bat. But like, that was interesting to hear. I think that it is that way for a lot of people. Just kind of going back and forth between those two sides of your brain.
Yeah, and sometimes in production it can be that way too. When you're on set, sometimes you have this great idea for a shot, and you're getting ready to put it together, and you realize that's not going to work.
Yeah,
and that's fine. I mean, that's all part of the process, and that's where you kind of make adjustments on the fly sometimes as well.
Yeah, I've realized that in post.
Yeah, definitely, right? It's like, okay. And that's the power of editing though, too. It's like, you get your material and you just think, at times, I mean, because it really is kind of like a toss of the dice. I remember Ron Howard saying this. He says, when you're shooting, you're not quite sure what you've got. I mean, the performances can look great and everything, and that's good. That's a positive sign. But it's not until you start assembling it together in the editing room that you go, oh, okay, yeah, I guess this does work, and you find those moments, even like if you're a little rushed and you go, oh, we just got a quick blast through this, but maybe you didn't spend the time on performances that you wanted just because of the schedule and all that kind of thing. But then when you look at it, you can find those little nuggets, and it works. It's like you bring it. Someone said, when you shoot the film, you almost kill it, and then you revive it and bring it back from the dead. When you're putting it back together, and it's amazing how it just works.
The thing is, yeah, you remake the film a few times where it's like, this could have worked, but it didn't quite. So I have to redo the film and editing. I think,
right.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking with me, Paul. I'm excited to see what you do next, and I want to steal all the information that you get from the Stage 32 thing.
Yeah,
and hear how that works.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But let's actually watch the short now, and thanks again for talking with me.
Thanks for having me, Robin.
All right.
I can't believe you're a metal fan. Thought you weren't into this.
Well, hey, I'm full of surprises.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, I love guy flicks.
No way. What's your favorite?
Any of the Mission Impossibles.
Those are the best. What else?
My second toe is bigger than my big toe.
Get out.
No, look. It means you have royalty in your family.
Huh. So, should I call you Your Majesty from now on?
Yes.
All right, I see how it is.
But for my biggest surprise, you have to close your eyes.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. No peeking.
I'm sorry.
What was that?
I don't know. Stay here. I'm gonna go check it out.
Be careful.
Who's there? Don't mess with me, man. I know how to use this. I am not kidding. I will knock your freaking head off.